Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tablelands Regional Council Ordinary Council meeting for April. Could I remind everyone to turn their devices off or turn them on to silent, please? Do we have apologies? No, thank you. Could I ask everyone to stand, please? I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we meet on today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. We'll now observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect for the members of our community who have recently passed. We wish their family and friends peace and comfort during this challenging time. Thank you. Item 6, declaration of any interest by councillors or senior council officers. Councillor Spanos.
You know, have a conflict. Icon Spanos informed the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in accordance with section 150 EN of the Local Government Act 2009 in relation to item 16.1, encroachment of shed at Prize Creek development, due to my son Theodore Spanos being employed by the tenant of the shed in question, which is owned by the state. It could be presumed that my son is considered a related party under the Local Government Act, could benefit, albeit indirectly, from the outcome of council's decision, and that my participation in any such decision would be considered contrary to public interest. On this basis, and out of an abundance of caution, I will not participate in the decision relating to this matter and will leave the meeting when the matter is discussed and voted on.
Thanks, Councillor Spanos. Any other declarations, councillors? No, thank you. That brings us to item 7, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the 27th of March. Do we have a mover and seconder that those minutes are a true and accurate record?
The question about those minutes, do I do that?
Is it about their accuracy?
Yes.
Okay. Do we deal with that first? Yep.
Yeah.
Councillor Barty, yeah.
I'm not sure if this has changed since this week, but in relation to item 12.3, the Miller discussion, I just didn't feel that Councillor Vilney's alternate motion was recorded correctly there.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to respond through the chair. So council officers did have a look at the video. The alternative motion was put up, but what was ultimately voted on was that it just be deferred and not the alternative motion. So the minutes capture the decision to defer to this meeting because you didn't actually vote up the alternative motion as what would be recorded in the minutes.
But I thought the alternative motion was moved and seconded, so do we not have to record that then in the minutes?
It wasn't
voted on, but it was moved and seconded. Is that not correct?
Yeah, second. Oh, it was moved and seconded.
Yeah.
We can add that it was moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Any other adjustments to the minutes of the previous meeting? So can we have a mover and seconder taking into account Councillor Barty's amendment there? Yeah, so Councillor Bilney moving, Councillor Barty seconding. Those in favour? That's carried. That's 7. Item 8, business arising, actions out of the minutes of the previous meeting. We do have some questions on notice here. Question from Councillor Bilney. That was regarding the alignment of Hanson Lane and Malanda. Councillor Bilney.
Yep,
Did you
got? Yes, through the chair, I received that email. I understand its contents. So it's fine.
Happy with that?
Yes,
Yeah, thank you. And the next one was question on notice was from Councillor Barty regarding the dog park and amenities, Solar Crescent, Planet Avenue.
Yep, I've received that information.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Any matters arising from the floor? Very good, thank you. That brings us to item 9, deputations. I'd like to invite Mr. Pat Reynolds on behalf of the Millamilla community in regard to proposed parking arrangements in the upgrade to the Millamilla Falls. Up to the front, thanks Pat.
Thank you, Mayor Rod, CEO, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present Millamilla Community's case to council today. Firstly, we would really like to acknowledge the excellent work put in by the planners. They've gone into that job with some real enthusiasm. And the other thing that was really quite amazing, ladies and gentlemen, was the amount of funding they seemed to source for it. It was a remarkable job on their part. The absolute last thing we would want to do right now is walk away from this. I can absolutely tell you, in some moments of bloody frustrated passion, that was definitely what we wanted to do. But there's been too much good work done. I've spent what I feel is a fair percentage of my adult life fighting for some ownership of the Millamilla Falls by the Millamilla community. However, we are in complete disagreement about the buses going to the bottom car park. We're not 90%, we're not 95%, we are 100% in disagreement. We're complete locksteps. I'd like to share a few undeniable facts with you here today. Fact 1, if the tour buses decided that they didn't want to come to Millamilla anymore at all, that would not change the economy of our community or the town $1, not $1, because they almost never go there. On the rarest occasions that they do turn up in town, they get out of their bus, get their cut lunches, they go down into the Lions Park, they use the free Lions barbecue, which we pay the power for, they get back into the buses and leave. Fact number 2, if the buses, once again, did stop going to the bottom car park, it would make no difference to the economies of the rest of the towns across the tableland, because they would still do their routes. They wouldn't stop because they couldn't go to the Millamilla Falls. It's the way they make their living. Fact number 3, council did seek public consultation when this whole project started, and they were giving overwhelming and consistent information that we wanted the park swapped. And not only that, we've taken it upon ourselves through the Lions Club to get new signs made and swapped it over ourselves at one stage. That's how important to us it was. We lasted 2 days. Fact number 4, and this is really important, ladies and gentlemen, a committee was formed to work with the planners on the whole project for the falls, right? So you had 7 or 8, maybe 10 representatives from the Milamilla community working with the planners. Some of them are here today. Twice during those meetings, the planners took a vote from the committee on our opinions on the bus parking at the falls. And not once, but twice. You would have thought once might have been enough, but twice we delivered a unanimous vote that we did not want those buses at the Milamilla Falls. They left there with absolutely no chance of thinking something different. Fact number 5, 90% of the people in those buses are young, fit, able people. They're not scared of a bit of the wet weather at Milamilla because they've got their swimming togs on to go swimming. They can dance down that staircase. Fact number 6, in contrast, the visitors who arrive by car are often grey nomads, families with young children or those with mobility concerns who struggle to deal with the staircase. We've got lots and lots of people that haven't got a disability sticker that have said they can no longer go to the falls if this goes through, because they can't negotiate that staircase and they've got no right to use up a disability car park. Fact number 7, and this is the last one, it is well known and has been openly discussed for years, and I've been involved across Tableland tourism, that these major tour operators do absolutely nothing for the whole Tableland community. They largely come with their packed lunches, and I know a few stop at different places, but they go across the Tableland and back to Cairns, and the businesses in Cairns reap all the awards, from accommodation, meals, alcohol, souvenir shops. None of that happens up here. Milamilla is a pretty happy town. We've got a pretty darn positive outlook, and we've absolutely, definitely got a yes culture. And we really appreciate the good working relationship with council. We think it's pretty symbiotic. Sometimes council listens to us, and sometimes we listen to them. This time, we are coming to you with our loudest and most unified voice ever. We want the buses out of the bottom car park. To date, absolutely no compelling arguments have been delivered to us why this can't happen. Not one reasonable argument. And I've been to every committee meeting, the same as the other members. We urge you on the grounds of safety, common sense, equity and economic reality to revise the parking arrangements and put the buses at the top where they belong. Councillors, when you put your hand on your heart and vote today, you will either be voting to support the wishes of an entire community and a measured amount of its income, or you will be voting for a few businesses down in Cairns who are not going to make any less money by not going to the bottom car park. We believe that when democracy has got to the stage where it can ignore the wishes of an entire community, we're buggered. We're buggered. I'll yield.
Thank you. Right, that brings us to item 10, the mayoral minute. I've got a few items here, councillors. First off, I'll move a procedural motion that we set aside the standing orders to bring item 12.4, the Milamilla Falls tour bus usage item. We bring that forward to the beginning of the agenda. We'll bring that forward, we'll do that first, and then we'll return to the main agenda. So, can I have a vote on that? It's a procedural motion, I can move it. Can I have a vote that we bring that item forward, councillors? Those in favour? That's carried, that's 7. Thanks, Jackie. The second one, councillors, I propose that due to, and I need a seconder for this one, that due to an administrative error, item 13.4, Councillor Remuneration Report 2025, be withdrawn from the agenda because it does not require a resolution to be enacted. So could I have a seconder for that? Councillor Lang seconding. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Finally, councillors, I'd like to flag that today we start with a refresh on how we conduct our meetings. There's a significant gap between what our own standing orders say and what we actually do. In the interest of consistency, sound governance and fairness, we'll commence that journey today. It won't happen smoothly or be mastered in one ordinary council meeting. Rather, it'll take a few meetings to massage the floors and come out the other side, more sure about our processes and ultimately making better decisions. So just flagging that, councillors. All right, so that brings us to item 12.4. Miller Falls tour bus usage. Could I have the officer come forward, please? Thanks, Darren. So when you're ready, Darren, right? Thank you.
Morning, councillors. The design of the Miller Falls upgrade project has considered and investigated alternate vehicle access and parking options for many different vehicle configurations and types of visitors and users. We have considered community feedback requesting that the current arrangements be reversed, with the upper car park being allocated to bus and coach parking. Other considerations include access for disabled and mobility impaired visitors, and general access for able-bodied visitors in passenger vehicles, tourists in recreational vehicles, and organised tour groups. The design process has included direct engagement with community interest groups and tour bus operators with a view to understanding the site's usage and limitations to assist with developing the design. Many site constraints limit the extent of the development, including protected vegetation, a heavily sloping site, limited width and sight lines of the existing access roads and physical boundaries, and a limited project budget. The concept design, through community engagement, developed a best fit layout with all these factors in mind. Investigations through the detailed design stage have identified further limitations with the existing roads for different types of vehicle movements, larger vehicle swept paths, allowance for turning circles and other access constraints. The intent of the new design for the lower car parking area is to provide 3 parking spaces for people with a disability, across into the forecourt area from that disabled car parking area, speed restriction and line marking, allowance for tour bus set down and pickup area and temporary parking, and area separated from the viewing deck to picnic area, with a significant improvement to pedestrian safety by way of barrier protection between vehicle access loop and the forecourt and amenities access footpath. The upper car park area provides 2 large vehicle parking spaces, either smaller tour buses or RVs, and 11 passenger vehicle spaces. No vehicles can safely or legally move from the lower to the upper car parking area, or vice versa, and the upper car parking area does not have adequate space to accommodate coach parking or turning, prohibiting tour tour bus access to the lower parking area will mean that these vehicles will no longer have access to Millimilla Falls. The design presented provides a best fit solution for all vehicle types and usage, as well as providing for mobility impaired and disabled and disability access. It has considered the views, requests and concerns from all of the engaged stakeholders, and I welcome any questions from councillors.
Councillors, any questions for officers?
Darren, just regarding the PWD parks, I did ask previously, is there any reason that there has to be 3 down there, or can some of those be compared to regular parking?
So through the chair, I don't have any back-end information on what that number, how that number has come about. No, I don't have any information on that, unfortunately.
So just following on, Councillor Barty, Councillor Barty was concerned that there wasn't any parks for just regular users down at the bottom.
Yeah.
So the question, I think the follow-on question is are we able to reduce the number of PWD parks and possibly just put in a regular park? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
So through the chair, that is probably something that we could go back to the designer and investigate that option.
Yeah.
Potentially that might give us 1, maybe 2 extra car parks, potentially only 1, but that's certainly something we can go back to the designer to have a chat with them, sure.
Any more questions, councillors?
I've got another one. Has there been any support for the current design from the community at Argyle, like consultation with the bus companies and things like that? I'm just wondering a bit more information about that.
Through the chair, Councillor Barty, yes, the Marmo Aboriginal Corporation has provided a letter of support indicating their support for allowing bus access and the potential of more visitation to not just Millimilla Falls but the Millimilla region. Not surprisingly, the tour operators were all in favour of a design that gave them equitable access. They did indicate that and acknowledge that over many years they've had it pretty good there in terms of full access and being able to park where they want. So they acknowledge that a design that formalised parking and had a clear space for them would improve things for both their use and any other visitation.
What was their response to the upper car park solution? Like,
they acknowledged that that was an alternate, and obviously, as the project manager has indicated, that there is simply not enough space for the coaches, and also lots of problematic logistics with not being able to identify if there are spaces in that top car park if you turn down that side of the road. So they, all bar one, which was Barefoot Tours, indicated that their preference was parking at the bottom. Baz from Barefoot Tours indicated he was a fairly handy driver himself and could manoeuvre in the top car park. All the others, and of those groups, a couple represented coach tours that weren't regular visitation, but brought chartered groups regularly throughout the year, indicated the only access for them.
was there any indication from the tour operators about the age and ability of the people on their tours?
Yeah, so the vast majority of regular visitation is, as Pat indicated, young people on those daily visits through groups such as Uncle Brian's and Cairns Adventure Group, but particularly those chartered groups, which bring hundreds, if not thousands per year, would have older clientele. And no, we didn't get a definitive number, but there would be regular people that would have mobility issues, I would think, in those chartered groups.
Okay. Okay, and Blake, just one more question, with the tour operators, was there like discussion about them like making a financial contribution to accessing the area?
Yeah, so that was floated purely as an indicative, in the future if council chose to take that option. And they would certainly like to be involved in that discussion, but they, as a whole, indicated they would be open to that option down the track. So a contribution, depending on the model that council might take, would be an option for council.
Yeah.
Sorry, through the chair. So the chief executive can regulate parking and charge a fee for parking. And as Blake said, and certainly Mr. Reynolds said as well, you probably have, I would suggest maybe 90% of people on the buses can negotiate the stairs, but then the concern is the 10% or more who can't.
Councillor Spanos?
Just through the chair.
This is a question. We're still doing questions at the moment before we get into the.
All right, I won't, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up then.
Yeah, so not a question, Councillor Spanos?
Well, it's not so much a question, it's just an option that I was going to state, so I won't.
We'll come to you next.
Okay, right.
Final call for questions for the officers. Okay, I'm now seeking a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation, noting that we have an alternative motion from Councillor Bilney and Councillor Cardew. Councillors. Councillor Lamb and Councillor Vardy. Councillor Lamb, would you like to talk first?
Yes, I would. So, tourism is actually what's put Millimilla Falls on the map. By doing this, we're restricting that tourism to that space, which is then going to have a roll-on effect for the rest of our communities. It's going to have a dramatic drop in the usage of that area. So if it is to end, it should just in its entirety. I think we should just, it's either let it happen or don't. Got no more words that would be pleasant to say.
Councillors? Yeah, anyone else like to talk to the motion? Councillor Cardew?
Thanks, Mayor. So we've got a motion now for
Sorry, Councillor Cardew.
we've got a motion now. We've got a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, I certainly don't support the officer's recommendation. I fully support what Pat Reynolds, the debutant in the deputation, stated here today. We do need to listen to our community. That's what they're there for. That's what we're here for. And and I fully agree. And I've said it many times in our information sessions and the like. The tour operators have their own agenda. They come up from Cairns in the morning and end up in Cairns in the afternoon and do a whirlwind tour of our assets that we have here, our beauty. So yeah, spend very little money. So there's no way I'll be supporting having buses park in the lower car parking as per the officer's recommendation. I believe there's an alternative. I had an alternative motion prepared in line in incorporating some of the alternative motion that Councillor Bilney was going to propose. However, after speaking with Mr. Reynolds, I'm going to withdraw my alternative and allow, if this motion fails, allow Councillor Bilney to put his motion forward.
We did have the alternative up on the screen there, I believe.
We did, now it's also.
So you done there, councillor?
I'm done.
Yeah, councillor Billy?
Yeah, so, excuse me, I wish to object to the motion that's currently on the screen. I've got an alternative motion for consideration by council. Would you like me to read that out?
So you're objecting to the officer's recommendation?
I've got an alternative motion.
Yep.
There is one change that I would like to change, to make from the original that I sent through, and that relates to, I put in recognised mobility issues. I want to strike out recognise and just have mobility issues.
That's done.
Yep,
Is
okay,
that-
so that's, yep. Yes, that's correct. That's how I would like it stated. Would you like me to read that out?
If you don't mind, that'll be good. Thanks.
Okay, my alternate motion reads, the council designate the top car park at Millimilla Falls for bus and general visitor vehicle parking, and permit parking in the lower car park for vehicles transporting passengers with mobility issues, including those with disability parking permits. Maintenance vehicles servicing infrastructure within the Millimilla Falls precinct will be exempt from these parking restrictions. Council will ensure the provision of appropriate signage and accessibility features to support this arrangement. The reason that I've made an alternate motion, it seeks to provide a more inclusive and functional parking arrangement in Millimilla Falls by balancing the needs of general visitors, tour operators and individuals with mobility challenges. Designating the top car park for buses and general vehicle parking helps manage traffic flow and reduces congestion in the lower area, which is closer to the falls and therefore more appropriate for visitors requiring easier access. Allowing vehicles transporting people with mobility issues to use the lower car park ensures compliance with accessibility obligations and supports equitable access to this iconic natural attraction. The inclusion of maintenance vehicle exemptions ensures continued operational access to essential infrastructure. This approach improves safety, accessibility and the overall visitor experience while supporting sustainable site management. Those are the reasons for my alternative.
Yeah, so we've got Councillor Bilney has flagged the alternative motion, so we've all seen it. We only have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation at this point. Just clarifying that, because that would need a seconder to further that discussion, but we need to deal with it first.
No, you're on the alternative, so you want to second it.
I'll second the alternative.
Can I just read that motion again, please? I just want to make sure I've got it clear in my head that it's saying what it says.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll just take some time for councillors to read through that motion again. I'll just ask the CEO to comment on the reasons there.
Thank you very much. So with the reasons, if you go down, so ordinarily you would put the motion up and not speak to it, but with the reasons there's mentioned that it ensures compliance, and that is not correct. So that's actually I don't think you could say that this would ensure compliance with accessibility obligations, because that's a legal point.
Councillor Bilney.
Through the chair, respectfully, I was giving my reasons for the alternate motion. I actually haven't even spoken to the motion as yet, so which I will do in due course. I'm happy to strike that out if there's a legality issue in my comment. Happy to do so.
Councillors?
Mr Mayor, I second the alternate motion.
Yeah, I had recorded that, yes, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Bilney, would you like to continue?
Yep. Through the chair, Firstly, thanks Pat for your passionate deputation on behalf of the community, much appreciated. I'd also like to acknowledge the work done by officers in the report. It's been a bit of a challenge. While buses have historically accessed the area, this practice has long caused concern within the Millimilla community. Current directional signage may also be perceived as exclusionary, privileging one mode of visitation over others. Whilst it's not always possible to cater to all visitor preferences, particularly in natural settings, access decisions must be consistent, equitable and justifiable across similar sites. I have listened closely to community feedback. There is a deeply held view that Millimilla Falls delivers little direct benefit to the town itself. For example, while some two groups occasionally stop in town to use the free barbecues, ironically maintained and paid for by the Lions, this is an inconsistent and yields minimal economic return for local businesses. In contrast, the self-drive market represents a strong and growing opportunity. Redirecting buses to the top car park while preserving lower level access for maintenance vehicles and those with mobility issues such as the disabled, the elderly, mothers or fathers with prams, for example, could address several issues. It will improve road safety, reduce environmental impacts from idling engines, and it will preserve the visitor experience by managing site capacity at a known compact natural attraction. Whilst this may pose challenges for the large coach operators, they may consider smaller shuttles or coaster buses as an operational adjustment. In summary, I support reversing the current signage to direct bus parking to the top car park and general vehicle parking down the bottom. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I support reversing the current signage to direct bus parking to the top car park and general vehicle parking also. Access to the lower car park should be reserved for maintenance vehicles and all types of vehicles assisting carrying passengers with mobility challenges. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Billy. Councillors? Councillor Spanos, you had your hand up before.
I've listened and I think I'm okay. I'm happy with what's been going on, so probably just a little bit premature.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Vardy?
Seek clarification from Councillor Billy. So when you say the access to the lower by people with mobility issues, you're including the coaster buses?
If they're carrying patrons that have mobility issues, that's where they could go. Absolutely.
Okay.
The last thing trying to do with this is be discriminative in any way.
I think I just want to make one other comment. Like, what we're talking about is signage and paint lines. If in 12 months this clearly isn't working, we can revisit this, can't we? So is that something?
I'm not necessarily sure that if this is going to be a pilot as such, this is what community are seeking.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but
if community raise issues with how it's then tracking thereafter, absolutely I would look at it. But I'd certainly be guided by community
I'll just go to the CEO first, then Councillor Cardew.
Thank you. So I just want to raise a couple of unknowns in relation to the current wording. So when we refer to mobility issues, what criteria are you using to determine whether a person has a mobility issue or not?
Through the chair, for me, if you've got a sore knee, a bad knee, and you will struggle to walk down those stairs, I have no issue with them parking down the bottom.
So if you're on a large, so in terms of the signage that we would put up, is the suggestion that it would be a sign that says cars can park here and other vehicles if any persons on that vehicle have a mobility issue? You'll need to clarify what that is. Is that a mum with a pram? Is that someone who's 80? Is that a sore knee? How do we, so we have to have some criteria. And then we need to look at how will we regulate that. Are we going to do sort of random audits of buses to make sure there's really someone on there that meets a criteria?
Through the chair, look, regulation and compliance of anything on the tablelands is going to always be difficult due to capacity constraints. I guess in a lot of times with our signage, we're relying on people to do the right thing.
Emma, just sorry, through the chair. So if we're thinking about the people on a bus, just an average bus load, say there's 10% of people that are unable to get down the stairs, and we've put up signs which indicates that we are going to regulate, because it would be regulated. So the Chief Executive Officer regulates parking under Section 101 of the Tourism Act. How are we going to enforce that if we don't have very clear criteria? Because you will end up with the buses will continue to park there, because there's probably every chance that they may have someone, whether it's a young person that's hurt their knee in a football match, or an elderly person, or a mum with a pram, or a dad with a pram, that would fall within a very indeterminate definition of mobility. So these are when you move a motion and when you pass that, I'm only able to do those that are legally able to be achieved. So I'm flagging in advance that there will be issues with the particular wording in this motion. And that's something that I've raised consistently in this past month.
If the issue is...
Oh, sorry, we'll just go to Councillor Cardew was next.
I'm happy to wait for Councillor Barty there.
Councillor Barty.
Well, I was just going to, in response to what you were saying, if the issue is predominantly with the buses and the tour buses, is this something that can be addressed by becoming to an arrangement with them about if they're going to be paying to go there? Is that something that can be addressed, that, you know, the requirements of them visiting, that sort of thing? Is that a different way to approach that?
I'm happy to answer that question. Thank you very much. So the Chief Executive may regulate parking in an off-street regulated parking area. So you can regulate things like specifying the times when a vehicle may or may not be parked, requiring a payment for a fee for a vehicle parked, specifying the types of vehicles that may or may not be parked, specifying the purposes for which the vehicle may or may not be parked, and specifying where it's regulation of parking. So this, for instance, would be, you know, you're specifying the types and purposes. So what you're saying is no buses unless there's someone there with a mobility issue. What a mobility issue is, it's not consistent with the criteria under regulation for what a person with a disability is. So this is a new thing. It's not a recognised term. So we would need to look at, well, what does that mean? But charging a fee is separate. You don't need to.
Oh, but I'm just saying that if we're going to the trouble of entering into a contract with, you know, that if that cannot be part of that process.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. Look, to be quite honest with you, I'm over this car parking issue. This is the fourth time that a report's been brought to this council regarding car parking at the lower car parking area. 3 times previously we've said no. This is the fourth time. Now's the fourth time. I definitely agree that we should be only allowing the buses to park in the upper level. The signage can be appropriately worded to allow for drop-off and pick-up of anybody with a disability, or a mum with a baby in a pram, or the like. That can be addressed through signage. As far as regulatory enforcement, we don't regulatory enforce lots of things within our shire, within our community. There's heaps and heaps of things that we could regulate more or provide enforcement over on an everyday basis. So that's, for me, that's not an issue. Just want to get on with this, and I would like to think that this would be the last time that such a report like this comes to council. So fully support what Councillor Billings is doing, fully support what the community is saying. We just need to get on with it and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, could I just go to the CEO and get a bit more clarification on whether you believe what we're looking at up there can be enacted lawfully?
Thank you for the question. No, I don't, because there's no criteria. If it said passengers with disabilities, where there's a known criteria, but passengers with mobility issues? If the purpose is to not have buses park at the bottom, that's a very separate issue to having a car parking arrangement that facilitates the drop-off and pick-up of people with mobility issues, in which case you have a designated zone which is drop-off and pick-up only. And that wouldn't be restricted to, say, just cars. It could also include buses. What it's really doing is preventing buses parking there. So I think there are ways to achieve, to the best of your ability, things that can be done, but this is not wording that will achieve that.
Councillor Hayden?
So through the chair, can you just have no buses at all down the bottom? That's it, and any car can go down there, does it? Small vehicle? I don't know, if you're worried about the disability, well, if someone with disability is going to drive closer anyway.
Sorry, through the chair, yes you can. So you can regulate parking. You can say none of this type of vehicle in this car park. My understanding of how we've reached this point is there was a concern that where buses or other non-car vehicles or what have you have people that have mobility issues, they're not going to, it will exclude them and they will be up the top. And as Mr. Reynolds said, some people can't negotiate for stairs.
Councillor Hayden?
Oh, through the chair, you could still have no buses parking or standing. You could probably have a drop-off if it need be, but you could have no standing. Is that so you don't stay for?
So if I'm through the chair, absolutely you could have a drop-off. The issue is that even with a personal vehicle, once you've dropped off, there's no way safe to go from the bottom car park to the top car park or the other way around. There's not sufficient turning circle, let alone with a bus or with an RV or whatever. So what do you do when you have dropped off that person? You got to go back to Mill to actually turn around and then go back to the top car park.
I'll just say a few words first, Councillor Cardew. Look, first of all, I want to say I completely respect Pat Reynolds and the Miller community. I respect them greatly. I know how hard they work to build their town. I have concerns about the lawfulness of what we're trying to achieve. It's one thing to pass a motion that you have no inkling that it's unlawful. It's another thing to pass a motion that looks like it might be unlawful. It looks that you know it looks like it might be unlawful. That's a separate thing. But look, the other thing I want to say is that what council's doing at Miller Falls is exactly what we should be doing. We're basically building public assets, infrastructure and amenities, and we're doing a really good job. We're making necessary improvements in toilet amenities, the roadway, the parking, the green space, the stairway and other components. It's a great project for the region and for every visitor and user of Miller Falls. So council is doing its bit, and it concerns me. You know, we're putting more money into Miller Falls than has ever been put into Miller Falls, perhaps. So we're making a significant investment, and it just concerns me that on the one hand we're talking about, as a council, we're talking about how important tourism is as an industry, and on the other hand we've got caught between the Miller community, who we all respect, and the bus operators who are not stopping in the Miller town. So it concerns me that council, in our efforts to do a value add to Miller Falls, which is desperately needed and long overdue, in our effort to do that, now we're being asked to restrict access from the tour buses at at the bottom car park, one that we're just spending a mozza on and upgrading with, you know, using ratepayer and taxpayer money to upgrade an iconic waterfall that is well known right throughout the country. So I feel like council's getting jammed when we're actually doing exactly what we should, but we're getting jammed over this one thing. And, you know, I'm concerned about that, because I want to, when I think of Millimilla Falls, I just don't, as much as I understand the feeling in Millimilla, you know, it's about the entire Tablelands package for me as the mayor. I'm thinking about our entire package. I'm not thinking about just improving one asset here and there. I'm thinking about all our assets. How do we value add? How do we improve them? So they're the concerns for me. But I just wanted to share that. Councillors, Councillor Kaji.
Thanks, Mayor. When I come onto this council 5 years ago, one of my aims was to reduce bureaucracy and red tape within this organisation. I've clearly failed in that endeavour. What I'm seeing here today is more bureaucratic red tape than I've ever seen in this organisation before. Enough's enough. You know, like we've done risk appetite workshops to identify some sort of acceptable risk that we're prepared to take in decisions that we make. Our risk appetite, I think, at the time was moderate. Well, the risk appetite here is absolutely zero. You know? So, you know, we've got to cater for the majority, not the minority. And by putting up appropriate signage at the top of the driveway, allowing people with any sort of disability to have a drop-off and pick-up arrangement will suffice and keep the buses out of there. They can go down there with their little buses and drop people off and come back and pick them up again, not park there. So, you know. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion to have the vote put.
Sorry, can I just raise something? Sorry, what you've just suggested is an alternative motion.
No.
So are you saying you want a drop-off and pick-up zone in the bottom car park for the buses? Did you just
But
say
whatever, if there's no wording for the signage that we're going to put up at the top of the thing yet, that can be, if that's what we need to put on our wording to allow it to happen, yes. Can we amend this motion with council ability, amend that motion to put that word in?
It would be an alternative motion. So we can regulate parking on the bottom, which is you could have, you know, a drop-off and pick-up zone, but that is a different motion to this. Because this does not speak about that at all.
Yeah, look, happy to modify that, amend the alternate, if there's such a word.
Do you want to vote on this one, and then we can go introduce an alternate motion, which will have different wording.
Can't the mover amend his motion without having to do another one?
Through the chair, sorry, we've got a motion. This is the alternate motion. So what you're suggesting is, it's not an alternate motion. It's not a minor amendment. It's quite, so you're asking for us to regulate and have a drop-off and pick-up zone, which is fine. I would suggest you deal with this motion, and then if you want an alternate motion, you can rely on some of the wording here, but then you would say that for tour buses, this is a suggestion, drop off and pick up only in the lower car park. Is that what you're seeking to do? And this is the issue if we're trying to invent motions on the fly, which is what we're trying to do, particularly when it involves legislation, regulation, those types of things.
Councillor Vardy.
So just to clarify, so can this motion be withdrawn and then another alternate?
Look, if we include the drop-off and pick-up which takes care of the lawfulness of it, I'm willing to consider that.
Just through the CEO, should we be laying this on the table and coming back and drafting something else?
If your intent, am I happy, are you happy if I make a bit of a suggestion here? All right, so if it says that the council designate the top car park for buses and general visitor parking, and that parking be restricted pursuant to section 101 of the Tourism Act. 101. Yep. 101. Yep. In the lower car park to, Mark, would we say not include buses, or do we say vehicles over X, Y, Z? Because are you seeking to also restrict RVs, or is it large tour buses, small tour buses? Vehicles, what's the class of vehicle of buses?
From memory, it's class 2 and 3 vehicles. Class 2 and 3
vehicles in bracket.
That's from memory.
Buses.
Yeah.
So we have, Darren, can we have a quick Google just to see what class 2 and 3 vehicles are?
Do we need to stipulate classes?
Yes.
Allow vehicles with people with disabilities or an injury, or mum and dad with a pram.
Thank you. Is that a question for me? Sorry, through the chair. I think what you're trying to do is restrict buses from parking there. Is that correct or not?
Correct.
But you also don't want buses with people with mobility issues to not be able to drop off and pick up, or anything that's not. Is that correct? Is that what you're trying to achieve?
Happy for buses to go down there and drop off.
Drop off and pick up?
And pick up?
Yeah, but not park.
Not park.
Through the chair, it's stated in the report, the feedback from the tour operators, especially those that operate the coasters with up to 30 passengers, was their duty of care required the driver to be present with their passengers. So that was their argument for remaining at the bottom.
I'm a bit lost.
Well, we've informed you of the information, and then I guess will this achieve what you're trying, is this what you think you're trying to achieve? So it's restricting parking, it's not restricting drop-offs. That is an additional issue, so that's been information provided by the council officer. Thank you, Lane.
Councillor Carchi.
As we previously stated, if the buses can't get down there, or if the buses don't want to come here to the Mill Falls, if part of that criteria is that the bus driver can't sit with the bus and wait at the bottom car park while they're going to have a swim or a picnic lunch or what have you, that's their issue. But if their buses can't do that because the driver has to stay with them, well, who cares? Let them go. Let them not go down there. Just allow vehicles to go down there to drop off and pick up if they have someone, if they need to.
Councillor Spanley.
I have a question. Is the community okay with us having, like I heard Pat say there before, that he's not happy, the community's not happy with any buses going down there at all, okay? So now we're talking about the possibility of letting buses go down to drop off. Is the community happy with us allowing that? So if they were allowed to go up, down, drop off and then get out of there, yeah, don't stay parking, don't stay idling, don't stay with them. If they're okay to do, is the community okay with that? Is that what the Miller community would be happy with? Like what I heard was they don't want buses down there at all. You know, so if you've got people that they need to drop off, whether it be a disability or whether that's what they do, they just turn up, drop the people off and they head out of there. And as I just heard Kev say, we don't care if the bus companies think that they're meant to be there. If they're meant to be, they go and park their bus wherever and then come back down and hang out with these people. However, is the community in Miller okay with the fact that we have buses go down, drop off and then get out of there. Is that, because all I heard was they don't want buses down there at all. Would that be something that the community would accept? And I mean, that's just something I'm thinking here, you know, I've heard they don't want them down there at all.
Do you want to respond to that? Is it a question?
Yeah, it was a question.
Oh, sorry, so, sorry, councillor Spanos, so understanding orders, we obviously respond to questions. I'm not sure, Blake, do we know whether there's a no bus in the community response?
Look, from those that we have had regular contact with, the issue is buses staying there. So I would think a compromise would be to allow a drop off and for them to leave. That is the major issue.
To me, Blake, yes.
That is the major issue
Yep, okay.
for those that have that position.
Councillor Donnelly?
Yeah, through the chair. Look, I think the community would consider a compromise for a drop-off pickup. Yeah, the main concern is the idling bus that's there for a period of time, taking up prime spots, probably impacting on other visitors' amenity whilst there. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, thanks, Manny. Why are we focusing on buses, whether we go out then just buses or whatever? Why don't we just have the wording on our signage at the top that if a vehicle has someone that needs to be dropped off, drop it off. If it's a bus, a car, a push bike, or whatever, allow them to go down there and drop off and come back and pick up. Why do we have to differentiate what type of vehicle, what class of vehicle? Just put a word there that says vehicle. A vehicle that needs to drop off persons with a disability or what have you. Put that in the motion and let's get on with it.
Councillors, we haven't got a mover and seconder for that one that's on the screen there.
Okay, happy here.
Can you strike out that last bit there? From there to the end, to the 6 vehicles, strike that out. What have we got to nominate for?
I'm sorry, can I just further clarify that? If the purpose is to stop buses parking down below, are you now suggesting an alternative, which is to stop people parking, full stop? Because we have to specify the type of vehicle that can't park below. If you want to stop parking of a particular vehicle in the lower car park, to regulate, well, for the regulation, we have to specify what that vehicle is. If we take that out, what am I restricting parking to?
Just allow passenger vehicles to park down there, whether they're a disabled vehicle or they're not. Just allow passenger vehicles to park in there, all other vehicles park up at the top. If any vehicle has a person with a disability or someone with an impairment, allow them to go down, drop off, and then come back and pick up.
Thank you, and this is,
all I'm asking.
thank you, and this does exactly that, because it's basically ruling out the classes of vehicles, which is the buses, from parking there. It's not stopping any other vehicle, motorbike, whatever, from parking there. It's not stopping RVs, it's not stopping cars. All it is doing is stopping parking of buses, of that particular class of vehicle.
Yeah, we don't want buses there, so.
Yeah, and that's what this is doing.
Yep.
From parking,
Yep.
there's no reference to drop off, standing, whatever.
So that's allowable then.
Parking, just parking.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that.
Councillor Hayden? Councillor Hayden?
Second.
Oh,
Oh, you didn't
sorry.
ask for a second, sorry.
Sorry. So Councillor Billney moving and Councillor Hayden seconding. Councillor Vardy.
Clarification, what exactly does class 3, class 4 and class 6, what big, can we just?
So through the chair, that's where it becomes a bit clumsy, because the classification of vehicles as per the Austroad standards, which is applicable in Queensland, there are multiple different vehicle types in a class. So a class 3, for example, is a 2-axle medium rigid vehicle, which is a 2-axle bus or truck. So basically, we would be excluding trucks that have 2 axles under that class there as well. Under our local law, we can create exemptions for our own service vehicles and things like that. And it's only about parking. So if we're going there to empty a septic tank, we're technically not parking, we're doing work. So a class 4 is a 3-axle truck or bus, and a class 6 is actually an articulated bus or a semi-trailer truck. So that's what's in those classes. Unfortunately, not every individual vehicle has its own class. That would be easy. Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Hayden.
But it's on the floor.
Yeah, Councillor Spanos.
No.
Am I able to ask another question? Yes. Okay. So this does allow for vehicles to go down, drop off, and come back out again. And this is any vehicle?
It's silent on picking up, dropping off.
It's silent.
Silent.
That sounds good.
All it is doing is restricting parking.
That's all it is. Okay. Well, I
That's
think
what it's doing.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would support this. I think that's the way to word it.
So councillors, final call. We've got it's our second or third alternate motion. But Councillor Bilney has moved, Councillor Hayden has seconded. I was going to just ask for our final.
Can I just flag if this is defeated? I have another alternative.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, we're just going to put some reasons there. So councillors, we're just putting some, because remember it's different from the council officer's recommendation, so we're just putting some reasons. Let's just, you could almost just stop at the end of the first sentence as the reason. How's that?
Okay, and just Councillor Lang flagged that if this motion doesn't get up, she has another alternative. So we've all got the motion there on the screen. Those in favour? Carried.
Barty and Lang voted against it. No
Sorry,
one
what was
else.
that?
It was just councillor Barty and Lang voted
And
against
myself.
it. And
And
against, sorry.
Okay, councillors. We can now return to our original agenda, which brings us back to the CEO's item 11.1, the Chief Executive Officer's report. I'll hand over to the CEO.
Thank you very much, and through the chair, I'm very pleased to present the Chief Executive Officer report for April 2025 Ordinary Meeting of Council. And this report serves as an opportunity for me to provide a monthly update to our community on some key initiatives underway. Regarding budget preparation, so our budget preparations for the 25-26 financial year are well underway. Part of this work involves setting rates for the next financial year and determining priorities based on what ratepayers can afford. This is within the context of council having and managing, including maintaining, just under $900 million of assets or infrastructure. For our region, much of this infrastructure is aged. Managing a local government prudently and sustainably is a difficult task, made more difficult because of historical funding arrangements. Queensland councils are responsible for $150 billion of infrastructure, yet we receive just 3 cents in every tax dollar. That is, for every $100 of tax paid by Australians, the federal government keeps $80 and council receive only $3. This funding model was developed when local government was first introduced in Australia in 1974, when I was 3 years old, interestingly. And it leaves local governments with little choice but to raise rates, reduce services and not fund required maintenance. The Local Government Association of Queensland is advocating strongly on behalf of Queensland councils and ultimately the Queensland community for a change in the funding model. And we strongly support their efforts and stand with them and with our Queensland Council peers. A big shout out now to our local laws team for their outstanding service and their big impact. Under the Local Government Act, a local government is authorised to make and enforce any local law that is necessary or convenient for the good rule and of local government and its area. The TRC Local Laws team, which is comprised of 6 dedicated officers, operates within the Community Services team and continues to deliver exceptional outcomes under a consistently high workload. Despite a small team, they're making a significant impact across our region. They're currently managing an average of 80 to 100 customer request management cases at any given time, and it's really a testament to their tireless commitment and efficiency. Their work spans a diverse and challenging range of responsibilities, including responding to increasing dog-related complaints. So that's one for the community. Please be mindful of your dog and your other pets. Managing issues around homelessness, dealing with abandoned vehicles, addressing overgrown properties and carrying out daily operations at the TRC animal management facilities. In the past 2 years alone, the local teams has actively investigated an average of 3 dog attacks per week, with reports of attacks increasing. It's no small feat and it highlights their professionalism, their resilience and their ability to stay on top of critical matters while continuing to provide a community-first and compassionate approach, especially when assisting those experiencing homelessness. The team truly exemplifies what it's meant to punch above their weight. Their dedication, teamwork and focus to community safety and wellbeing are commendable. I'd also like to extend our appreciation to the Queensland Police Service for their ongoing collaboration and support, which plays a vital role in achieving positive outcomes for the community. On another note, our first Ag Forum will occur on the 12th of May from 10 AM to 2 PM at the Mount Garnet Town Hall. And this is for stakeholders involved in the agricultural sector. These forums are going to be held on a quarterly basis. They're going to rotate between towns in our region. They're a free event and we'll provide tea and coffee, and anyone who attends is welcome to bring something if they're likely to have an attack of hunger while they're there. The forums are a regular update by me and the team to talk about some of our initiatives here at Council, and importantly it's an opportunity from us to hear from stakeholders about any concerns that they may have. For this first one on 12th May, we will have Andrew Cripps attending, who's the State Disaster Coordinator for the February flooding events, and he will attend as part of his second round of consultation for those that were affected by the flooding. And we are also excited to be standing up other forums in the near future and to meet with any interested stakeholders. I've also provided in my report an update of some key council projects. As well, there's a link for people to get online and have a look at those key projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CEO. Can I have a mover of the CEO's report? And a seconder. So Councillor Lang and Councillor Hayden. Thank you. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. That brings us to 11.2, aged housing policy.
Good morning. Through the Chair, I'm pleased to present this report to Council regarding the review of TRC's current aged housing policy. The policy is being reviewed in line with feedback received from regulatory agencies and as a result of changes in legislation that impact the policy. TRC has been specifically requested by the Department of Housing and Public Works as part of its compliance provider self-assessment under the Queensland State Regulatory System for Community Housing to review and amend the current policy to ensure that it's up to date. TRC officers have reviewed the adequacy of the current policy and proposed the following key changes. Excuse me. The name change for the aged housing policy to Community Housing for Seniors policy to reflect current socially acceptable terminology. There are significant revisions to the intent, scope and policy statement sections to reflect that the policy applies to the operation of TRC's long-term community housing service for seniors and reflects that this service is currently contracted to an external provider to deliver. The updates also ensure that the policy aligns with various requirements set out in the Housing Regulation of 2015, as well as the Queensland Government's Social Housing Program specifications and the Social Housing eligibility criteria. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Yvette? Councillor Barty?
It's a really minor thing about, just on page 18, it's got the adopted date already filled out. Are we not adopting it today?
That was in anticipation of today's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it did just got dated. On the 3rd, not the 24th.
Apologies. This report was scheduled to be brought to council last month,
Oh,
so
okay.
that will be amended.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Yeah, I know it's 20, but it was just...
No, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Fantastic. Any more questions for Yvette? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Spanos moving, Councillor Bilney seconding. Does anyone wish to speak against on this one? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. That's 7-0. Um, 11.3, views request, renewal of lease over reserve lot 260 on K103695. Is that back to you, Yvette? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also pleased to present this report to council. Council has received a request for views from the Department of Natural Resources and Mines, Manufacturing and Regional and Rural Development in relation to the renewal of a term lease which has been granted by the state to a third party for grazing purposes. The report sets out TRC's views in relation to the future tenure arrangements over the land and recommends that council advise the department that due to regulatory restrictions, we are unable to commit to granting a trustee lease or permit over the land to the current lessee on expiry of the current lease. However, council could advise the department that council has no objection to the state themselves renewing that term lease.
Very good. Any questions for Yvette? We have a mover of the officer's recommendation and a seconder. Councillor Hayden moving, Councillor Vardy seconding. Does anyone wish to talk against this? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Um, 11.4, delegations, statutory powers under public records 2023. I'll go to Yvette one more time.
Through the Chair, the purpose of this report is to inform Council of delegable powers under the Public Records Act of 2023. The Public Records Act commenced in December of 2024 and established a comprehensive framework for the creation, management and preservation of public records in Queensland. The Act aims to ensure that public records accurately reflect the actions and decisions of public authorities, safeguards these records over time and maintains accessibility to them for current and future generations. These obligations are designed to enhance transparency, accountability, and the long-term preservation of public records by statutory agencies, including council.
Thanks, Yvette. Any questions for Yvette? Councillor Vardy?
I just wanted a little bit more information on page 47, under operating. It's got, if however the delegation is not accepted, the subsequent financial implications could be significant due to the increased administrative costs of processing applications and other matters through council meeting, and as a result of potential fraudulent administration taken by CC officers. I just want a little bit more information.
Certainly. So if council were not to endorse these delegations, council would actually have no ability to collect records, preserve them, and then also dispose of them in future after the relevant disposal retention periods have expired. Should our actions be challenged by anyone, we would be subject to penalties because of our breach of the legislation.
Any more questions? Can I have a mover and seconder for 11.4? Councillor Barty's moving, Councillor Spenos seconding. Anyone wish to speak against? Those in favour? Thank you. (11.5) Capital Projects Monthly Report, March 2025. I'll hand over to Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the Chair. This report is for Council to receive and note. It provides an update on projects as of the 8th of April and mainly reflects the project status as of the end of March. Last council meeting, there was a request for a financial summary for the Lakeside Amenities Roof Replacement project that was completed in March. This information has been provided in the body of the report. I can also note that there's no quantitative amount that can be given for indirect costs for this project at this time. However, it is noted that the project took approximately 5 days with 4 staff, TRC staff, undertaking that project. Through the Chair, I'm happy to take any questions regarding this report.
Thank you. Questions for Christie? Councillor Billy.
Through the Chair, I was actually going to ask the question about those indirect costs, but obviously you've stated that you can't quantify that. So is that something that we may be able to get an update on at a later date, or just a bit difficult to collate at this time?
It's probably just a little bit difficult to collate at this time. It is worth noting that on other larger projects that will take longer than 5 days, that there will definitely be impacts on projects such as this, where we'd have to pull staff onto those projects and backfill them with contractors for emergent works during those times. However, this project was only 5 days, so largely mitigated.
Yeah, thanks, Christie. Totally understand.
Any more questions for Christie? Do we have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Spenos moving, Councillor Lang seconding. Do we have any objections to this one? Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Thanks, Jackie. Um, 11.6, Project Governance Framework and Policy. Is that one yours?
Yes.
Thanks, Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the Chair. This report recommends Council adopt the new Project Governance Framework and Policy. The new framework and policy has been updated by combining the existing project decision framework and the project management framework. The intent is to streamline the governance of project decision making and delivery through the operational improvements made through the PMO. I note an error on page 70 with the date referencing the operational plan should be 2024-25 and the correct reference should be 1.4 of the current operational plan. Through the Chair, I'm happy to take any questions in regards to this report.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Cardew?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion that the item 11.6 be adjourned for a future meeting in order for a council information session to be undertaken with regards to this matter.
Councillor Cardew is moving a procedural motion. Those in favour? That's carried. Sorry, I didn't get the full count there. Was that 6? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 6-1.
You vote against?
Yes. 11.7, Millimilla Falls Stairs Compliance. Over to you, Christy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through the Chair. The report is for Council to receive and note. In summary, the new stairs connecting the lower and upper car park were renewed in 2024 as part of the Millimilla Falls Improvement Project. The report provides a summary of the standards used by the RPEQ certified engineer for the design of the stairs. In addition, there has also been advice provided by an independent building certifier with further details pertaining to the specific sections of the standards relevant to the stairs compliance. Through the Chair, I'm happy to take any questions in regards to this report.
Questions, councillors? Okay, can we have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Billney is moving, Councillor Vardy is seconding. Anyone wish to speak against? Councillor Cardew?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I wish to express my disappointment in the construction of those staircases out there. From a building certified's perspective and also from a licensed builder's perspective, the stairs out there don't really comply with anything much apart from the standard that you're allowed to have for walking track. There is no reason why those stairs and the handrail couldn't be made more compliant with relevant standards for staircases and handrails. The risers on those staircases are inconsistent. Typically, risers in staircases are meant to be equal. That could have easily been achieved through the construction of that staircase. The handrails, the maximum diameter of a handrail is 50 millimetres. That could easily have been achieved had someone had the foresight to challenge the design that was put up by the engineer and whoever. So what we've got out there is a new staircase that we spent a lot of money on that, in my view, is unsafe. You have handrails, in my view, that are non-compliant and someone will eventually fall and trip and hurt themselves out there.
Councillor Cardew, just a point of order, the handrails are compliant. Everything is compliant.
They're compliant.
That's just what we've been told.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything's been compliant. We understand you don't like it, but they're compliant. That was the whole purpose of bringing this investigation forward, was to check that they're compliant. And they are compliant. So don't say that they're not compliant.
Mr. Mayor?
That's incorrect.
Am I speaking or are you?
I just wanted to clarify that you're saying that they're not compliant. They are compliant.
In my mind, I said in my mind, they're not compliant with the standards that they could have been complied with.
I understand you don't like them, but that's the standards.
Am I having a say or are you going to keep interrupting me?
Well, I just want to correct things that you're saying that.
You can correct them after I've had a talk, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I just corrected it now because I don't want to leave it set.
Are we having meeting procedures? Are we following meeting procedures or we're not?
Councillor Cardew, if the councillor says something that's not correct, it's my responsibility to call that out, and that's what I do. So the handrail and the stairs are compliant.
I'm glad that's on public record for that, because when someone says that, I'm glad you've said that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried, that's 6. That brings us to item 11.8, IGEM Severe Weather Season 2023-2024 Review. Thanks, Sarah, I'll go over to you.
Chair, thank you. Good morning, councillors. The 2023-24 severe weather season was one of the most challenging on record, marked by multiple overlapping disasters across Queensland. On the 18th of April 24, the Minister for Police and Community Safety commissioned the Inspector General of Emergency Management to undertake a review. That review covered the period 1st of October 2023 to the 30th of April 2024. During that time, 12 disaster events occurred across Queensland, with 11 of those events occurring in just 4 months. These events often coincided, placing immense pressure on response systems, especially over that Christmas and New Year holiday period. During that time, the Tablelands Regional Council area was directly impacted by the Northern Queensland bushfires and tropical cyclone Jasper's severe rainfall and flooding in late 2023. In fact, 66 of 77 local government authorities across Queensland were activated for disaster recovery funding support during that time. It was a very complex season, as I said. There was heat waves and there were significant changes occurring to Queensland's disaster management system. You may remember during that time that QFES, Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, transitioned to the Queensland Fire Department, Emergency Management and the State Emergency Service transitioned to the Queensland Police Service. We became, local governments became responsible for Australian Warning Service compliant warnings from 1st of November 2023. There were state government machinery changes in December and local government elections in March 2024. So it was a very busy period. My report identifies the 22 observations, 21 insights and 9 recommendations that have been identified by the Office of the IGEM from this review and outlines how Tablelands Regional Council will respond locally. My report requests that Council formally receive the IGEM Severe Weather Season Review report of 23-24 and accepts in principle that the findings are relevant to our local government area and requires a coordinated local response. I'm happy to take questions.
Questions, councillors? Do we have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Lang moving, Councillor Bilney seconding. Did anyone wish to? So, I think Councillor Bilney wanted to talk to this one.
Through the chair, look, I'm not speaking against it. I want to provide a statement on behalf of yourself and myself as the chair and deputy chair of the LDMG and LDMG, that's right. Firstly, thank you, Sarah, and to your team for your ongoing commitment and dedication to disaster management in the Tablelands Regional Council. We're absolutely blessed to have your team working for us. The 23-24 IGEM Severe Weather Season Review provides a comprehensive reflection on the recent challenges faced during disasters across Queensland. I'm pleased to report that Tablelands Regional Council and our community are well positioned to engage with the outcomes of this review. The TRC has taken a proactive and long-term approach to disaster resilience. For more than a decade, we've supported the development of community disaster teams, I just mentioned them, local groups that work directly with the LDMG, providing ground-level intelligence, strengthening communication, and enabling self-reliance during times of disaster. These teams have proven to be one of our greatest assets. We should continue to strengthen and support them. While the formal recommendations in the report are important, particularly for state agencies and system-wide improvements, it is the observations and insights that hold the most practical value for us locally. They reflect the real on-the-ground experiences. They reflect the real on-the-ground experiences of communities and provide actionable guidance that will immediately use to refine local disaster management approach. In short, they are gold for councils like ours. A clear theme throughout the report, and one that we fully support, is the concept of shared responsibility. Now that's a key, shared responsibility. It's not always up to the TRC to do everything. We need to empower. Disaster preparedness, response and recovery cannot rest solely with government. Every resident, every business, every organisation does have a role to play. We've long promoted this principle in our community, education and engagement, and that remains central to our ongoing strategy. This report doesn't call for a complete overhaul of what we're doing. It affirms our current direction and provides a roadmap to continue strengthening our resilience. TRC remains committed to working with state partners, our community and our local teams to ensure we are ready for whatever challenges lie ahead. That's on behalf of the LDMG, so thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks very much. We have a mover and seconder. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried. We might take a short break, councillors. We'll come back at 10 to in about 15 minutes. If that's okay. Okay, councillors, that brings us to item 12.1, review of road maintenance and resheet programs. I'll hand over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through Chair, so following passing of a mayoral mandate at the February 25 ordinary meeting, this report has been prepared, which undertakes a comprehensive review of our maintenance and gravel resheet programs for our road network, through which we'll go into detail about the processes that are used, referring to documents that we help guide us in our decision-making processes, and present this report for your consideration, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions for David? Do we have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hayden and Councillor Barty. Anyone wish to talk to this? Councillor Cardew.
Thanks, Mayor. Can I ask you, Mr. Mayor, as this was your mayoral minute, what the intent of the mayoral minute was trying to achieve when you asked for this investigation to be undertaken?
The primary purpose of this one was about doing some homework on our road maintenance and resheet programs before we enter our budget, because, as I said in my mayoral minute, councillors and officers spend most of our time dealing with road issues, largely gravel roads, but also seal roads at times. But that's how we spend a lot of our time dealing with customers and dealing with complaints. Clearly, we feel like it's possibly under-resourced, and I think the review shows that we need to increase our budget allocation in the upcoming budget. So that was the purpose for me. Do a refresh on it, just in the shadows of our budget, so that we know what we need to put in the budget to perform at a higher level.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Because my view was that the intent was to do an investigation, which is very thorough, thank you, Dave. It's already information that we already know. Most of us in here, most of us should be fully aware of what's in this report. The problems that we've had and the issues that we've had in previous years with our gravel roads or dirt roads, whatever you want to call them, and the way we go about maintaining them is the issue. And this report does not provide any actions on how we're going to address that or remedy that. So that's what I thought. That was my expectations of that mayoral minute, was that we would get actions out of this report or out of this investigation to move forward to do things better when we do maintenance on our gravel roads or dirt roads. And I don't believe we've achieved that. We've got a very good summary of what we do at the moment, but what we're trying to do at the moment, what we're doing at the moment isn't working for us, because we're getting all these complaints about the standard of the work that we do on our gravel roads and what we do and how we do it. We don't do this, we don't do that, etc., etc. So what I would like to see is that we expand on this now that this work's been done, this body of work's been done. We expand on this, how to better do our maintenance on our gravel roads. We're fully aware we need to put more funds into it, into our maintenance. We know that, everyone knows that. It's just the way we go about doing our works. At our information session the other day, I tried to highlight the fact that yes, we need to put more money into the budget for our maintenance works on these gravel roads, dirt roads. But when we go out, when we provide a budget for a road, we provide a budget, no matter what that budget is, doesn't matter what that budget figure is, but when we go out to do it, we put gravel on the road, some gravel on the road. Doesn't matter how much gravel, doesn't have to be done to an F&Q rock standard or anything else. We put some gravel on the road to afford the operator to be able to work with, instead of dragging material out of the drains that 9 times out of 10 is unsuitable for the road surface. Clean the drains, reprofile the drains, make the drains work. We've got trees growing in our drains this big on some of our roads that I've just recently inspected, because the drains haven't been cleaned out for God knows how long. So allowing those things to happen is just going to increase our maintenance costs down the track when it becomes a really big issue. So when we go and do our works on our roads and our drains and things, let's do it, complete it, reshape, put some gravel on the road, shape the road, clean the drains out, reprofile the drains and make them work, and then move to the next section. If we've only got $1 million to do a certain bit, well, we do $1 million worth of that bit, but we do it properly. That's the sort of thing that I'd like to see come out of this review.
I'll just go to the CEO.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those comments. So there are things that we can actually do from this, and I'm referring to the executive statement there. So there is a gap between that road maintenance service standard provided, which we do based on risk, and the budget limitations, and also the services standard expected by the community. We can do a cost benefit analysis of reducing that gap. So that would be lifting the standard, and Kev, Councillor Kaji, that probably takes into account the drainage, etc. And we can look at that in consideration of what the ratepayers can actually afford to pay to fund that gap. We can also increase the resheeting budget over 8 years by $21.4 million. Or alternatively, we can also decide not to resheet current gravel roads that don't meet the STAR 1.6 rating. So there'll be some roads that we just don't resheet. So there are things that we can do because of this report, and ultimately it's a matter for councillors in terms of their appetite. And we're very, very conscious of the fact of, we really do have to look at what standards can ratepayers afford, taking into account this is just one aspect of the services and assets that we manage as council.
Thank you. Councillor Bill.
Yeah, through the chair. I agree. We need to resource our roads maintenance more thoroughly, ensuring that our drains are functional. I think that's what I hear loudly in the community. But on page 28, Dave, there's a comment there that the transport strategy is programmed to be reviewed this year. I think it's timely. I think it's great to make sure that it's still fit for purpose. Is it intended, or you may not have decided it, is it intended to use that same sort of methodology, or would you look at maybe different other measures of identifying risk and what levels of services to be undertaken, or is that just purely just looking at the current road strategy?
It was a review of the strategy in general. If there's identified a need to consider alternative ways of measuring the risk, or in how we calculate the STAR rating, or those percentages that are used in and the weightings that are used in those calculations, and then that would be considered. in consultation with yourselves and relevant stakeholders.
Do other councils actually use a star rating as such to inform level of service?
Yeah, so there's two typical ways of breaking down a transport network to help manage it. One being through road classification, for example, arterials, collectors, accesses. Where an authority has a lot of a road network within one class of road, as we do, then to help better manage that, that's partly why we use the star rating. It sort of pulls that apart a bit more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillors? Councillor Cardew?
So, Mr Mayor, are we able to, well, just going back a bit, that strategy review, we've been asking for that for, I don't know how long now. I know it's been on the table for at least 12 months. It hasn't happened, but what are we going to do? Are we going to get any, what are we going to do with this report now that we've got it? Do we need to move a motion here that we get some actions out of it, or what? Because otherwise we're not going anywhere with it.
Well, the report informs our budget deliberations. That's the primary purpose of the report.
Like I said, we can put 1 million or 50 million towards it. It's the way we go about doing the operational part of it. And that's what's identified in the strategy. We've got to address those concerns, otherwise we're not achieving anything, and we're still going to get the same complaints every single wet season, or not even during the wet season, whenever we're going to do work on our roads. You know, bringing materials out of the drains and putting it on there and it blows away in 5 minutes. We're going to continue to get that. We've got to improve. We've got to improve what we do. So my question is, do we need to amend this motion to provide actions to move forward?
Through CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. So some of the actions, so it does speak about the actions that could be taken. So your options are, and I'm referring here, you can have a look at the executive summary. So it could be that you could amend it to also include, and the chief executive takes steps in relation to the findings of, so you've got 3 different things. Do you want a cost benefit analysis taking into account council's financial position? That would lift the standard from a risk, the assessment being based on a risk standard, to something being more of a higher standard. You can, one of the actions could be that council, one of the sub-actions, resolved to provide an additional $21.4 million over the next 8 years. And then the third one could be that the decision is made not to resheet current gravel roads that don't meet the star rating of 1.6. So you can actually, and that's completely consistent with the findings, it's in here already. So you could say the council received a report, blah, 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 blah. Further, the CEO states steps in relation to the findings of any of those 3 that you'd like. Is there anything in particular? Yeah,
look, I don't want to see the wording in there that we're not going to put any gravel on any of the dirt already. That's just totally off the table.
So we'll rule out that finding, but what about 21.4 million over 8 years? And then also a risk benefit analysis around, cost benefit analysis around that expectation. So at the moment, we're only resheeting according to the risk, which is very different from, you know, the standard, which is that 8-year standard, and also community expectation. So would you like to receive a report about that?
I don't mind doing work in regards to risk. If there's a road out there that's really badly damaged and it needs to be repaired, we might have maintenance done. Let's do that. We can do that. But what I'm trying to get at is that when we do that maintenance on those roads, we do it properly. We put a bit of gravel on it, we shape it, clean the drains out, reshape, repurpose the drains to make them work, and then move on to the next project. It doesn't matter which project we do or whatever, if the risk identifies that we need to do work on that road, we do it properly. That's what I'm trying to get at. As opposed to going in, just quickly putting a bit of whatever on in the pothole or the failure and then moving on. That's when we get all the complaints, because we're not doing stuff properly. What I want to see is our strategies change, that when we take all our machinery and our people and everything else out to a job site, we do it in a complete manner, not a substandard or ad hoc manner.
Oh, so I was about to say, through the chair, so that could actually be achieved with something like a cost benefit analysis. So we're talking about, at the moment, there's not enough money to put towards resheeting, to resheet them at the frequency we should be resheeting the gravel roads, which is 8 years. So at the moment, because of the amount of money dedicated to this particular activity, it's not even enough to meet that. So everything is just assessed on a risk basis, and that means, you know, all the extra bits would be technically a higher standard, so that's not done. One of the findings was, and that's really an expectation, so if the expectation is a higher standard, i.e. you do all the stuff around it and you don't just fix this whatever, you know, 2 foot deep pothole because someone might die if they drive into it. So you can achieve that by doing something like a cost benefit analysis. You can achieve that, you'd probably be able to achieve that by putting more money towards it, so you're resheeting more frequently. You can achieve what you want within the findings that are there. If you want to include that the CEO takes steps in relation to any particular findings. If the appetite is not that we go out and say we're not doing anything to do with gravel roads that don't meet the 1.6, so that's not a standard that you're talking about, because that's a lower standard, but you can achieve the other things with the findings there. Sorry, Mark, I might hand over to you.
Yeah, I'll just go to Councillor Hayden
Oh, sorry.
and Mark.
So through the chair, I would think we're talking more about efficiencies. I wouldn't think that, because I can recognise that one road's gravelled, I may grade it with a bit of gravel. Next 2 months' time, the same road's being done, the same section. So to me, I think it's more about the efficiency of what we do instead of what spending the money. I think we need to be more efficient when we do our roads and to consider what roads may need doing, instead of having them done 2 or 3 times. I mean, I'm just saying that it's probably more efficiency. That's how I see it.
I'll go, sorry, Mark, I'll go to Councillor.
Someone's trying to ring me.
It's not us.
Which vibrates on my arm and is annoying me. So, just if I may, just make some general comments about our maintenance practices and resheeting. They're 2 separate things. But first, I would like to make a shout out to our maintenance staff and our construction staff in the road space, because they do this for a living. We've got probably about 40 people there that do this day in, day out, and I do believe that they do a good job with the funding and the resources that they have. Just want to put that out there. Resheeting is basically reapplying gravel that has been lost from the road over time, and on average you should be doing it on an 8-yearly cycle, but it heavily depends on the area the road is in, the geographical conditions. Is it hilly, is it not, the type of traffic that it gets, the volume. So it's an average, and currently we just don't have enough repeated condition assessment information to determine which road actually needs every 6 years or which road needs every 15 years, to refine that. That is work that we will be doing over time. So we're proposing to include another condition assessment for our roads in the next year, which will give us 2 condition assessments with a 2-year time span. So that will give us a better indication of how our roads deteriorate over time, depending on where they are and how they're being used. And that will better inform resheeting requirements, but also grading requirements. So our maintenance is twofold. So we grade roads, our gravel roads, and unfortunately we don't have enough funding to do all our gravel roads. So we achieve around 70 or 80% of our roads once a year. And currently we do that based on the information that our road stewards provide us as to how rough the roads are. We can only grade when there's a reasonably dry period, so that's roughly between April and November, depending on when the wet season starts and finishes. And then in the wet season itself, we do spot repair. So if there's potholes and significant scouring, we do go out there with a skid steer and do spot repairs. There's no other way to do it because you can't put a grade on the road when it's soaking wet. You just kind of create a disaster. So that's so when we grade, we generally do a medium formation grade. So a medium formation grade has got very little at the moment. It's got very little additional gravel material. So we work with what we've got. We do, if the material in the drain is suitable, we do drag that back onto the road because sometimes it's actually good to have some fines to seal your road surface and make it last longer to bind the coarse gravel together. But where the material is not suitable, staff should not be dragging that onto the road. So we'll continue to look into improvements in that space, but I'm fairly sure our staff is competent enough to understand when that material is suitable and when it's not suitable. We do clean our drains out, but our intervention level at the moment is 50%. So if the drain is 50% full, that's when we intervene and we drag it out. We could increase that service level and have the intervention level at a lower level, but again, it all talks to more cost. I would like to flag that the condition assessment that we did in October 2023, so that's almost 2 years ago, so that's why we want to do another one, did indicate that most of our roads were actually of gravel and sealed roads were actually of a relatively good condition. We were at average or above average condition compared to similar councils in Queensland, and also just flagging, we've got very little locations where we have to close roads because they're just not drivable, and we also have a very low traffic incident statistic. So just to put perception of condition into perspective. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Because I appreciate everything that the engineer has said, and that's fine. It's not my issue. My issue is that there's two things. One, we need to provide more money in the budget to increase our maintenance activities on our roads. Secondly, we need to change the strategy to achieve a minimum standard of work when we're actually on site doing the work. They're the two things. So that when we are on site, we do get to put a little bit of gravel on if it's only just a maintenance drain or whatever. We clean the drains out and we move on. Those are the two issues. More money in the budget and change our strategy to achieve a higher minimum standard. That's the actions that I'd like to see come out of this report.
Councillors? Councillor Billney.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, we're about to embark on our budget deliberations. That's probably the most appropriate time to move forwards. You know, we understand what we're trying to achieve. If it means we've got to put more in the bucket to achieve that, we've got to make that decision. And if it means something else out there is going to go at a lower level within council's gambit, we'll so be it. But yeah, the road network is very important and it needs to be adequately funded.
Very good. Councillor Cardew,
Yeah.
I think we've been. I just want to ask other councillors. Councillors, anyone else wish to talk to this one? Councillor Hayden, did you want to write? No, you're right. Yeah. Last call, Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion. To the words to the effect that council acknowledge that we need to put further budget consideration into further funding into our maintenance program for roads, and that we review the maintenance strategy that it's called.
There's the there's the transport strategy and the maintenance management plan.
Review whatever strategies we need to review to increase our minimum standard of works when we go and do, when we're doing our works on the road.
Through the CEO.
Thank you. So reference to increased standard, that is already captured under, if we want to do that cost benefit analysis, which is really about increasing the standard. So that is consistent with the report. So it would, I think what you proposed is an amended, rather than an alternative, so that's good. Amended. So you're just amending the motion rather than.
I just want to amend the motion to recognise those two things. We need to put more money in the maintenance budget, and we need to review our, whatever strategies we need to review to increase our minimum standard of maintenance when we do our works on the road.
Oh, sorry. Who was first?
You can take that.
Councillor Hayden.
So if I was going to pass that, I'm not happy with statement about increased standard of works. I actually think, to be honest, I think our workers do as much as they can with the money they have, and I think that's probably quite an unfair statement. It's like we're criticising some of the workers.
I've moved the motion.
And I'm asking, and I actually passed it, and I thought I could take that out.
That's right, there's no seconder, so why are we debating?
So, are you happy with the wording up there, Councillor Cardew?
Yep.
So Councillor Cardew's moved an amendment to the motion. So we need a seconder. Councillor Spanos. So Councillor Billing.
Through the chair, look, on that page it talks about transport strategy being reviewed this year. Should we actually put a timeline on that, or is that a bit restrictive?
Through the chair, it's currently in the operational plan as to be completed by the end of June. It's in the current year financial year operational plan. We were aiming to do that earlier in the year. However, due to other competing priorities, we just haven't been able to progress that sufficiently. I would have to defer to David to get his view of if he can achieve that by June, or if it should be the calendar year, and if we can include a different month.
At this stage, I should think probably the calendar year would be a more appropriate timeframe to give it the time that it's due, rather than rush the review and have something sort of half-baked.
So what month? December?
Yeah.
December 25. Transport strategy and road maintenance management.
Excellent.
And I'm following on from the management plan, Jackie, to increase the minimum standard of the service, of the minimum standard. Yeah. Of to increase the minimum standard of works being carried out.
Thank you. Just through the chair. So if we're reviewing the strategies in the plan, part of that would, the recommendations have not, you're preempting the recommendations if you're saying we want to increase the minimum standard. If we review it, it might come back and say we actually don't need to increase it. So I think rather than preempting what the outcome might be, because we're already doing the cost benefit analysis, which will look at the standards.
The outcome I want to achieve by the review is to increase the minimum standard for the work that we do.
Well, then do we actually need to do the review if you're just saying I want a higher standard?
Well, you do, you need to change that strategy, because at the moment,
Yeah.
the strategy doesn't address that. So, I just and I don't want dot point 3 in it, I just want that 2 simple dot points.
Okay, sorry, just for the standing orders. So the second one is not consistent with the council officer's recommendation. The third one, which you've removed, is consistent. And that would have meant we're bringing back a report about how much the different standard, the additional standards or the increased standards or the lessing will cost, taking into account the ability of ratepayers to fund that. So you've.
Say that again, sorry.
So the last one, which is consistent with the finding, it's literally word for word. The first one is consistent with the finding, and there was an amount given in the report. The last one is consistent with the finding, which said we should undertake a cost-benefit analysis, and that was really about addressing the gap between us dealing with things on a risk basis versus us dealing with things on a standard basis where there's a higher standard. So what you are proposing is you would like a higher standard, which is fine. But do you think we should do a report and bring that to council first about how much that will cost? Yep. Taking into account the ability of ratepayers to be able to afford it?
No, because we'll be debating that at budget. We'll be debating how much we can afford at budget time.
Yes, but first we need to understand the different levels of funding required for the different standards. As in, so at the moment it's a low level, it's
It doesn't matter how much, if we can get dot point 2, right, if we can review the strategy and the management plan to increase the minimum standard, right, it doesn't matter what whatever amount of money we have to do that certain amount of work on the road, we do it to that minimum standard, and it goes as far as the budget allows that we've approved. That's it.
Sorry, can I just add there? What that will mean is we will not be able to do all the roads that are classed at the highest risk, because we'll be choosing.
We can't do all the roads now.
But that's not a reason to not do them. What you're saying is you want, within the amount of money allowed, you want the roads that we can, the roads done to a higher standard, which will use more money, but that means you will end up with roads that we can't get to on a risk basis. Which we have now. So if councillors are happy with that, but that will mean essentially the third thing in that we say we can't resheet all of those roads.
We can't resheet them.
That meet 1.6.
We can't resheet them all now. The engineer just said, and the report says we can only do 80% of them now. So there are some that's going to miss out. We obviously prioritise those ones now. We're doing that already. All I want to do is put more money in the budget, and then when we go out there, we do it properly, and we do it to a higher minimum standard, and we do whatever we can do with the amount of money that's been allocated in the budget. Nothing more, nothing less.
Councillor Billings.
Through the chair, I'm a little bit concerned about just increasing funding. I agree we need to increase it, but to what level? That hasn't been established, because we don't know or haven't been informed what that looks like. So I think that dot point 3 gives us far more understanding of what that looks like. Yeah, increase what, I just can't understand what that is in a figure until you know what you're looking at, is my view. Yeah.
And thank you. I'm happy to respond to that as well. So in the report, it actually says, so as a minimum, you could allocate an additional 21.4 million over 8 years. If you want to put some money in there in the interim, you could do that. But ultimately, you need to see the cost benefit analysis, which will show the different standards. It'll show how much the different standards cost. And then you've got to look at, well, what's the hit to the ratepayer in terms of rate rises, etc. But you actually need that analysis done.
In order to keep this moving, I'm happy to leave dot point 3 in.
Yeah. So for dot point 2, do you want to finish that at after the word plan?
No. That's the outcome I want to achieve out of reviewing that strategy. That's the outcome I want to achieve. That's what we've been trying to achieve for a long time.
Sorry, through the chair. So what you're saying, you've preempted it to say, I want a higher standard without actually understanding the costs.
No, we believe in dot point 3 in.
No, but the second one is, you want a review of the strategies to increase the minimum standards of work carried out.
Yeah.
I should say, I think the transport strategy is already a high standard that we can even achieve. So the transport strategy probably doesn't need review. Our issue is we don't have the funding to achieve this high standard in the
I'm
transport.
only going on what the officers are telling me, what we need to review. I don't care which one we review. All I want is to increase our standard of works when we do maintenance on our roads. How you word it, I don't care. I'm happy with that there.
I'll take that to the vote.
Did you want in one 21.4 million or not? Increase funding into the road budget? You don't want an amount.
Just through the chair, the 21.4 is only for resheeting.
Yeah.
Maintenance grading is a different.
Yeah. Yeah, let's not put dollars in there. Okay, we've got a mover, councillor Cardew, seconded by councillor Spanos. There's 3 dot points there. Those in favour? It's defeated. Go back to the original. So that brings us back to the original motion. We've got a councillor Hayden moved and councillor Barty second. Councillors, have you had enough discussion on this? Are you ready to go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried. 6-1. Okay, that brings us to 12.2. Tree management review. Oh, you're doing this one?
Well, thank you, through the chair, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I'll go to the general manager next month.
Yeah, I did write it, so might as well talk to it. Thank you, through the chair. So at the 27th February council meeting, council resolved that the chief executive officer undertake a review of council's policy position in relation to trees in road reserve in urban areas, and in, specifically how that is applied to the trees in Mountview Drive, and that refers to Gadaki trees. So in the report, I have summarized the vegetation management policy and the associated planning scheme policy number 6 that relates to vegetation. The local law requirements around allowing members of the public to plant trees in road reserve, and the relevant standards. I've also included how this relates to the state legislation context, and include some information on how council officers currently address vegetation management, and specifically in relation to risk assessments when we either identify issues, potential issues with trees itself, or when we receive complaints and requests in relation to that. There's also some information in relation to the LGM risk guidelines in relation to tree management, which go a bit further than what we can fund as a local government in relation to having a tree register and having proactive inspection programs. This council owns a lot of trees in road reserve in urban areas, let alone trees in parks and gardens and trees in road reserve in non-urban areas. It would be a substantial flow to the budget for council to have a register of all those trees and understand what the condition of those trees are on an annual basis. So we basically have a reactive approach to this. So how does that relate to the trees in Mountain View Drive, and then specifically the Kadaki trees? So those trees, although they're not listed on the approved or non-desired plant lists in the relevant policies, they are not appropriate for that area because they are too close and too high for the power lines, and also their spacing and location in the road reserve is not appropriate. I have no idea who planted them and how long ago, but they have been there for a long time. So if council is of mind of removing those trees, we did seek some preliminary cost indications, I would call them quotes, and they are a bit wide-ranging, but initially we would suggest that an approximate cost of $96,000 could potentially be sufficient to remove those trees. Obviously, that would have to be confirmed by appropriate quotes and scoping the work.
How much did you say, Mark?
$96,000 at the moment. So the recommendation is to receive and note the review of the policy position, and also to consider inclusion of the costs for removal of the Kadaki trees located in road reserve in front of numbers 29, 31, 33, 35, 37, 39 Mountain View Drive in the 2025-26 operational budget.
Thanks. Councillor Billney.
Yeah, through the chair. I've got two questions, Mark. On page 297, it states that the local government mutual services recommends that local governments adopt a tree management policy which guides all activities impacting on trees. We've actually got a vegetation management policy for urban areas which we adopted 12 or 18 months ago roughly. But are we keen? I'm keen to understand if we're looking at trying to adopt something ourselves, firstly. And the second part of my question, if council does support the felling of those 80 or so trees in Mountain View Drive, it's going to have a significant visual amenity effect. Would we also consider replanting an appropriate species, you know, as a not a one-for-one, but as a way of negating that taking away of the amenity?
Through the chair, thanks for those questions. I'll start with the second part of the question. So under our current vegetation management policy, there is a requirement that if we remove a tree that we replant that with an appropriate species. In this case, it probably wouldn't be appropriate to replant approximately 80 appropriate trees in the same location. So we would be looking at what the appropriate species and the appropriate spacing is in Mountain View Drive, and replant that there, and then find another location within Shire to replant the remaining trees to basically have a like-for-like replacement, but not necessarily in the same location. I'm not sure if I fully understand your first question, because we do have a vegetation management policy which I believe aligns with what the LGM risk guidelines sort of intimate. So,
well, just reading the report, it talks about recommendations, what local governments, what sort of policies they should be having, and one was a tree management policy which guides all activities impacting on trees. So my question was, you know, would we look at going down that path, or is it cost restrictive, or is there a benefit in looking into that?
So through the chair, I believe with the combination of documentation that we have, the current vegetation management policy, the planning scheme policy, the local law, I believe that we cater off on most, if not all, aspects of what that tree policy would be in the guideline. And obviously we will be reviewing our vegetation management policy over time. Currently it's restricted to trees in urban areas. That might expand in the future when we do the next review of the policy.
Might do a little bit of research and just see if there's any benefits on us progressing that at all. But anyway, yeah, thank you. Yep.
Any more questions for Mark?
Yeah, councillor Barty?
My question was just around that big difference in the quotes, like the 8,000 or 108. Was there any, what was the difference in the reason for that, I suppose?
Through the chair, we didn't necessarily go back and ask what the reason was for, because obviously we're not telling two people what their respective quotes are. We just approached two different companies and that's what we got back. But they are price indications. I don't think any of them actually went to site and had a look and then did a proper quote. It's not a binding quote in that sense. So it's just an indication of cost. But obviously they both businesses had a completely different understanding of the scope of work or risk or potential, didn't need the work as much as the other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew is moving. Councillor Bilney seconding. Anyone wish to speak against? Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Did I get a mover and seconder there? I did. Okay, that brings us to item 12.3, Battery Park Project Rehabilitation Completion. Could I have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation, noting that we've got an alternative recommendation from Councillor Cardew. Councillor Hayden's moving and Councillor Bilney is seconding. Councillor Hayden?
Did we not get a?
Sorry, I made a mistake, but we've got a mover and seconder. Sorry, Darren. So we'll go to Darren, and Darren can give us the update.
Good morning
we can
again.
go to questions. Thanks, Darren.
Apologies. Good morning again, councillors. So limited historic information was available for the site at the Battery Park project design phase. Limited soil test investigations were undertaken to inform design impacts, with the outcome of soil testing and investigations requiring a more thorough understanding of the site's history. Background information has since been obtained via a right to information application through the Department of Environment, Tourism, Science and Innovation, which has provided a wealth of site rectification and rehabilitation information. A decision notice to finalise the rehabilitation works has never been issued over the site. Therefore, a process under the Environmental Protection Act, the EPA, is required to be followed to achieve a decision notice finalising the site's rehabilitation. The required EPA process has many unknown costs and timeline impacts at this point. This report seeks direction from Council on the continuation of or direction forward for the Battery Park project, and I welcome any questions from Council.
Sorry, Councillor Cardew.
Thanks, Lee. Can I ask, what, with all the rehabilitation and everything else, what's the total project cost going to be?
So through the chair,
Estimated total project cost.
completely unknown at this stage, Councillor. There is a very rough estimate for the investigation phase of the project, between $200,000 and $300,000, and that is completely dependent on each phase, each step of the investigation process as to how much that will cost in the finish. And at the end of that point, we will have an understanding of what the gap analysis is and what the estimated costs are to undertake that additional work, if required, to achieve the point where we can get a decision notice issued. So Yeah, again, way too many unknowns at this stage. There's only a very certain cost that we do know at this point in time.
Thanks, Darren. So the total cost that you do know, I'm looking at this capital budget impact on page 377. You've got cost estimates here of $2.1 million. So that's the cost estimates to deliver the project in its entirety without all these other unknowns, is that right?
Through the chair, that's correct, yes.
What's our funding amount over the whole project?
The funding amount through Works for Queensland funding, from memory, I think it's $1.6 million.
So we've already got a shortfall of $500,000. Plus, we don't know what the rehabilitation costs are going to be. It could be 200, 300, or another $500,000. So council could potentially be out of pocket without funding or grant in the order of $1 million.
Potentially, there are potential options with their funding body. Once we have a good understanding of what the gap analysis is and what our additional project budget requirements are, there is a potential for that funding agreement to be renegotiated and modified to suit those additional costs. However, we won't be able to commence those discussions until we have an understanding of what those additional costs are going to be.
Yes, please.
Thank you, and through the chair, I just wanted to clarify, officer's recommendation 2 here is consistent with option 2 in the report. So reference in 3 to recommendation 2, so number 2 is consistent with option 2, not option 3 or the other options.
I thought we clarified that recommendation 2 reflects number 2.
In there it does,
Yeah.
but what you have at number 2 as a recommendation, that's cut and paste from option 2 in the report. So I think there was sort of some, because it doesn't say, recommendation 2 is that councillors resolve to adopt option 2. So I think there was some confusion over what was option 3 and what was option 2. So that's just clarifying.
Sorry, just to clarify that, officer's recommendation is for option 3 on page 8.
Oh, it is option 3. So is that option 3? Yeah.
Option 3 in the report is the continuation of the entirety of the project. The officer's recommendation, point number 2, point number 3 refers to point number 2 of the recommendation.
Yeah. So recommendation 2 here, which option is that from the report?
Option 3.
It is absolutely option 3.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councillor Bill,
Yeah, through the chair. Darren, just so you can clear my view, to finish the capping process to do the testing to allow the decision notice to be given, is it not council's responsibility to do that, to finalise that?
So through the chair, that hasn't been completely discussed at this stage. That will depend on the outcome of today's decision by council as to what impacts we might need to consider to move forward. If the decision is not to move forward with the project itself, then that is definitely something we'll have to consider as part of closing out whatever stage of the project that has been endorsed by council today.
Darren, but there's been some tests done and identify this contamination. It's a public space. Don't we have an obligation to deal with that contaminated space one way or the other? Whether the project proceeds or not, do we have to finalise and get a clear tick to say it's sweet to go and walk on?
So through the chair, that will be all part of the process of the EPA's guidelines to go through those steps to complete the rehabilitation. That will all be encompassed within that, yes.
Very good, councillors. So we have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hayden, you moved that one? Did you want to?
So are we, so with that, are we, on point 3, are we doing the recommendation 3 is what I'd like to see up there as an alternative? So we've got that up there now? We've still got 2 there.
That's the recommendation.
Well, two's referring
I'm
to the
not
two.
gonna, I'm
There's
gonna
no
ask for
word.
it to be changed. Oh,
It got confusing, because even I was like,
okay,
yeah.
I'll say what I'm
I think that's what you were
Yeah,
thinking.
three. Okay, I support the officer's recommendation with point 3 being amended to recommendation 3, and I wholeheartedly support the development of the Herberton Battery Park precinct. An initiative that the community is invested in. It's not just about building swings and slides, but about building community connections and a safe place for our children to grow, learn and play. In today's digital age, we're seeing more and more children spending their time indoors, often isolated in front of screens. The well-designed precinct of Battery Park Herberton, with 3 years of community stakeholders' involvement, can help change that. It will provide a vital outlet for physical activities, creativity and social interaction. But the benefits don't stop at the children. It will become a gathering place for families, not just for Herberton, but surrounding areas such as Wandekla, Watsonville and Irving Bay. It will foster relationships amongst neighbours, create opportunities for community events. Council has a unique chance to invest in something that will serve Herberton for decades to come. Obviously, every project has a cost, but by supporting officers' recommendations with number 3, Council can send a message that something is being designed and built for them. As I drive through Herberton in December, I see a lonely Christmas tree on a large vacant block of land. No one admiring the decorations because there's none, and getting into the spirit of Christmas because it's just a sad, lonely tree. This can change, so I'm hoping that Council will invest in the community and give the family a place to gather, laugh and make memories, and something Council can be proud of.
Thanks, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Billman.
Yeah, through the chair. I agree and support the officer's recommendation. I also note that this has been going for about 3 years with the community. There's probably an expectation that something will be delivered. It's unfortunate that that decision notice is an issue now. No one's taken apportioning blame for that, but we are where we're at. I see that we need to progress at least to get that cleared up. This project for me is catalytic for the community. I reflect on when we invested in Milan, Jack May Park, English Street update, the benefits, the economic benefits, the people that were drawn from out of region through that investment, it's been repaid plenty. So I think it's a great thing. If we don't proceed and the funding's withdrawn, in my view, that community won't have any opportunity for a very long future. We're on that infrastructure cliff. This is the last real chance to do something in Herberton, to develop something and get people coming into that region. So I think we need to press on.
Very good. On that note, councillors, those in favour? Did you want to speak, Councillor Cardew?
Yes, please, Mayor.
Councillor Cardew.
Mayor, I'd like to move an alternate motion to this, please.
You can flag one, Councillor Cardew, so we can put, it's up on the screen there. Is that the one that you sent to Jackie?
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Cardew, is that the one that you sent through?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yep. I'd like to move an alternate motion, and I'll read it out. That council end the project at its current state, finalise and complete the current design contract. This includes ending council's financial commitment to the project. The reasons are: an estimated total project cost has not been established, especially in regard to site rehabilitation costs. This project at this site could easily blow out, with the potential to place a significant financial burden on council. Given council's financial position regarding asset sustainability, the completion of this project in line with the project scope will further burden council's asset sustainability in the future.
So councillor Cardew is seeking a seconder on the alternative motion. Yeah, so motion's not supported, not seconded. So we'll revert back to the original motion. Councillor Hayden's motion, seconded by Councillor Bilney. I think we'll just take that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. That's 6. Okay, councillors, that brings us to Community and Corporate Services. Item 13.1, Financial Report March 2025. I'll pass over to you, Erica, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for receiving today's report, which is presenting the results to the end of March. I'd firstly like to point out that I've made a typo. So on the Statement of Comprehensive Income, on the last line, I believe it's page 411 on your report, the figure that's held within the statement itself is correct, but the net result description isn't correct. So if we just make it that. Sorry about that. I'd like to identify that our performance at the end of March is quite close to budget expectations, which is a good result. Total revenue is on target with a variance of just 0.65%, and our total expenses are over budget by just 2%. Primarily, this variance is due to employee benefits being higher than budget forecast and depreciation results being higher than forecast as well. But that does reflect our capitalisation of $19.9 million worth of capital works, so capital projects that have been completed, then transfer into depreciation. So that's what we're seeing. With the due date for rate notices now passed, our outstanding rates have reduced down to $6.3 million, and this has helped increase our cash balance, which is now $65 million. Sorry, just scrolling through my notes. I'd also like to note that we've made 2 emergency purchases this month. The first is for electrical repairs on Bravery Road, and the second is to construct a shelter over a pump that continually requires repairs due to weather damage. It's quite wet in our region, as you know. This shelter project was required, but didn't exactly qualify as emergency purchases. So we're providing some additional training to some staff, just to make sure that our future purchases qualify in the right categories. I have also noted, in part of the resolution for today, the specialised supplier that's been identified will provide advice to us on asset and financial sustainability, and this is specific information that they have and experience they have within local government environment. So that's a recommendation for today. And for the third officer's recommendation on today's report is for the reallocation of $60,860.20 to be exact, of unspent funds from the capital budget to the Miranda Majestic Theatre facade to repair the full extent of this damage that we've now identified. So there's an existing project that's in that place, but after reviews and scoping of that project, I've just identified that further budget is required. It's not an increase to our overall capital budget though, I'd just really like to note that. It's just reallocation of unspent funds from other projects. But happy to take any questions.
Questions for the Finance Manager, Councillor Bilney.
Through the Chair. Eric, I've got 2 questions. The first one you can take on notice. Okay. I didn't get a chance to dig around a bit, but it relates to item 3 recommendation, that the Majestic facade upgrade. I was of the understanding about 10, 12, 13 years ago, that facade was already replaced.
I will definitely need to
Yeah,
take that on
yeah,
notice.
so,
That's
sorry,
right.
and I'm happy to take that on notice.
Yeah.
I'm just unsure why it would have failed so quickly, and I know that's a tough question, but
Okay.
yeah.
I will find those
yeah.
details and
I can't give you anything more closer than that, but it's, yeah,
definitely before my time.
yes. If I can just understand that, that's the first one. Second one was about, on page 414, talks about creditors and property leases totaling around the 160 for the 90-day plus period. Just like to understand that a little bit more if possible.
Absolutely. So we did have some leases that were outstanding, but we've actually made some progress throughout this month. So this report is taken as at the end of March. We've had, since that date, we've had 72,000 paid, which is a great result. And then some majority of the outstanding balance actually relates to a report that we've got on the agenda today, which is included in our confidential. So depending on the movement from that report, I will make further reports.
Thanks, Erica.
Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, thanks. With regards to item 3 of the officer's recommendation, I agree. I want to know more about that too. So can that be removed from the recommendation so we're not voting on it?
If I may, through the chair, can I just start? So just understanding when it was previously replaced?
Yeah.
Is that the detail that you would like?
Yeah, I don't want to approve more expenditure unless we know why.
So we do have an existing, if I can answer partially potentially, we do have a project that's already on our list. We have identified that it does need replacement. Further investigations as the project has progressed has identified the extent of the damage was further than first thought.
Well, that's in line with what Councillor Billing's been asking, so until we get that answered, I don't want to be voting on providing more funding.
No, we know that it needs to be, the work needs to be done. It's our asset.
Yeah.
So it's reallocating unspent funds from capital. I don't see Councillor Billin.
Through the chair, the other complication in this is it's heritage listed. So that facade would probably be probably the most important part of that component of that building is its feature. So I don't have a problem with the increasing of the budget to achieve that. My question was, you know, trying to think back if it was fixed 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, was it material failure or whatever? I don't know. Anyway, so I'm happy to take that on notice.
Well, I don't think we've agreed that.
No, I don't want to strike that out.
Be struck out.
It's just reallocating unspent funds, correct? Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Billney, seconder. Councillor Hayden. Anyone wish to speak against? Those in favour? Carried. That's 6-1. That was Councillor Billney and Councillor Hayden, wasn't it? Yeah. All right, that brings us to 13.2. TRC Q3 Performance Report. I'll pass over to Don. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Mayor Marty. Good morning, councillors. This is the third edition of our quarterly performance report that combines the CRM management data with the operational report. Of note in here, I'd like to point out while we do have the after hours data in here, there is some data that it didn't provide. We have seen real improvement in that service since we changed providers, but they haven't been giving us some performance data that we want. That's been corrected, and in the next report, we'll be seeing that data. But we've had a significant decrease in complaints there, and that seems to be working very well as compared to what it was as of October, November of last year. Happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Councillor Lang?
So your reporting, that includes the everyday CRM as well. So I had someone come to me late yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to get this to you. The wait time just to hear the spiel is a minute. Then it takes another 30 seconds. It's like a minute and a half before you actually realise that you're on a wait list. And then it takes so long again until someone picks up the phone. So that's just the initial part of what you've got to listen to.
For the after hours.
Oh no, this is for the daily one. So this person rang, would have been about 2 o'clock, I think. And they put it on speaker, and just to hear the spiel of the, please be friendly to our staff, which I fully understand, I get, but it was a minute. And then another 30 seconds before, we thank you for your call, you're next in line, and then another, I don't know how many seconds before it was actually answered. So,
okay.
And that's just getting that part done. So they said that's every time she calls, she's been monitoring it, and she said it's at least a minute and a half.
A minute and a half, which is, again, most of our calls are answered within, supposed to be answered within 30 seconds. So
so that's why she was just raising that with me,
that's something I can definitely take under advisement and bring to Carly and get back to you.
Yeah, cool.
Any more questions for Don? Councillor Spanos?
So when you say 30 seconds it's meant to be, does that include the spiel then?
No, it should be, they should be from.
Should be everything.
Yeah, it should be, they should be speaking to someone within 30 seconds.
Within 30?
Yeah.
And Councillor Lane just said it's a minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference, isn't it?
So that little spiel is what's taking up that extra time.
I'll need to get some clarity on that from Carly, but I believe that the standard should be, they should be speaking to someone within 30 seconds.
Cool. Yeah, because I actually listened and it was.
Well, that makes more sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, councillors, do we have a mover and seconder for 13.2? Councillor Lang and Councillor Spanos. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. (13.3) Customer Request Management Review. Is that the one you talked about? Oh, sorry, I did that last time. Sorry.
All good, thank you.
Over to you, General Manager Hillary, thanks.
Through the Chair. At the 27 February 25 Council meeting, councillors supported a mayoral minute for a comprehensive review of TRC's customer request management system and processes, and bring a report back to Council by the April ordinary meeting. This report presents the findings of that review, which looked in detail at requests received in the 9 months to the 31st of March 25. Some key findings from the data of that review are the top 3 reasons for customer requests, so almost 23% of requests received, are to make applications associated with rates, make inquiries about rates, and to report water leaks. Out of 12,765 individual requests received, only 60% required a response. There were 2 instances of complaints recorded regarding no response to a CRM, and 37 complaints regarding a matter taking too long or the outcome of the CRM being unsatisfactory. 41 customers, or 0.6% of customers who contacted us, are responsible for approximately 8% of all requests received. Regarding the internal process, there are pockets of the organisation where improvements are required in the use of our systems generally, and the CEO and General Managers will continue to focus on training of staff to prioritise timely and consistent responses to customer requests and the efficient use of the systems available. I'm happy to take any questions in regard to this.
Questions for Hillary, councillors? No? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Barty and Councillor Spanos. Anyone wish to talk to the report?
Just to thank Hillary for the report. I'm interested in the system upgrade too. That sounds like a really positive thing. So,
Councillor Cardew?
Thanks, Mayor. This report is also a report come out of that Merrill minute from the previous meeting. And again, there's no action out of this report to improve the systems, which we all know we've had lots of issues in the past with our CRM systems, customer requests and the like. So it's this report again identifies what we already know, but doesn't identify how we're going to fix it.
Through the chair, if I can. I think the primary message is that we rely on the data that we can obtain from these types of reviews to guide us to where those improvements are needed, and the data isn't giving us that. So if councillors have a different experience, if they're hearing a different experience to that which is reflected in the data, that's the information we need. Because to request an improvement without actually being able to identify what the problem is or what the improvement is that is required, it's very difficult for officers to respond to that.
But one of the things that come to mind straight away is that when I put in customer requests through the system, I get a generated response back but I have absolutely no idea what it was for. There's no indication whatsoever on those responses to what the complaint was, or what the thing was.
Yeah, I'll just go to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Cardew. I can probably speak to that one because I raised it with the team, and it was one that shouldn't have gone to you, but also part of that was in the automatic emails, what data are populated in those emails, so you can have more or less depending on the preferences of the user of the system. So we went back and we looked at what was being pre-populated in those automatic emails, but that particular one should not have gone to you. It was actually an error in the system. So it was good that you brought it to our attention, because it should never have auto-generated in essence.
I mean, that's not the first one.
Yeah.
It's not the only one I've received, and people outside received the same ones.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so again, I would have expected that there would have been actions in this to remedy the situation that we have, and that we haven't got. I don't see them here.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to speak to the review is undertaken in a way that's consistent with the Merrill minute, but two, we have looked at what is being auto-populated in the emails that are going to customers to make sure there's enough detail there that they identify which area of council is dealing with their complaint. I think there's a range of items that are now included in those emails. So that would have been, if they're not receiving all the information, and that's really about those automatic emails that are generated, and about making sure we populate the data in those emails more fully, which I think that's something that's now been looked at.
But that, if I can just say, that's just one thing. What about I get complaints, regular complaints, saying that I put the CRM in and haven't heard anything back for weeks.
And I'm happy to take, obviously, is that a question? That
is
a question.
Well, it's a statement to say that these are just two issues out of all the issues. There's no actions to remedy these things.
Your experience is not experience that we're seeing reported in the data. If you have any concerns by any people, can you please provide their information to us? Otherwise, we end up with these vague, nebulous, not responding quickly. It's not reflected in the number of complaints that we get. We can't do anything until we get those complaints, and we need to have enough information when we receive those complaints to actually look at what happened in that particular instance. So if someone does come to you and say, hey, I've lodged this, I'm not getting a response, you should either ask them as the customer to make a complaint and let us know, but it doesn't assist if there's sort of vague, nebulous, colloquial days out there that have got concerns, but we aren't able to identify who they are or to go back through their concerns. And it may well be that they've received an outcome that they're not happy with, and then they don't consider the matter dealt with, which is fairly common. Or it may well be that for whatever reason, the CRM got closed off or we don't have their details. But we need to know who those people are so that we can action the complaints. Because the amount of complaints we actually receive does not reflect your perception of the amount of complaints out there, based on the data.
We'll go to Councillor Vardy next.
Yeah, I'm sort of addressing what you're saying. So for me, I've been really critical of the CRM system. I accept that people aren't complaining, but often people are over it by that stage and they don't want to. And like, while you may not be getting the complaints, we do. And I was critical when I first read this report that I didn't feel like we'd been consulted and that information hadn't been captured. But reading through it and looking at these system upgrades, I think that's going to address a lot of the problems I have, like having people be able to access and see where their CRM is at, especially for me, to be able to go in there and not, have to wait and do all this thing. If you can go in and directly see where it's at, I think that is a huge improvement, and I think that's going to address a lot of problems. And I can't wait for that. That is a good thing.
Councillor Lang.
I'm just going to say that I've had a completely different experience. The staff have been fantastic. CRMs are dealt with. If I do feel it's lagging, I just send a simple email and I'm getting responses. So I'm just saying kudos and well done from my perspective.
Councillor Spannell.
Yeah, I have to reiterate what Kylie is saying. I have not had any issues with CRMs. I've had most people who put in a CRM, I will follow it up myself, and it's come through, someone's dealt with it. So I don't know how that's working. I mean, there is a difference here, obviously. However, I'm finding it's working fairly well for me. That's just me.
Councillor Billings.
Through the chair. Look, I like the fact that we're going to be able to start tracking.
Yes, I agree.
Like track a parcel. I reckon that's fantastic. My only concern or negative I've got is it's going to take the next 3 to 4 years to achieve these upgrades. I'm not sure whether there's any way that we can advance them or what the reason behind those timelines, capacity or whatever it is, I don't know. But, if we can bring these on quicker, I'd really support that.
Yeah, I'll just go to the CEO.
Thank you. Sorry, Hilary, what number of complaints did you receive?
So
what did you say about the actual system?
So we've had two complaints where they didn't get a response, and 37 complaints regarding something taking too long or them not being happy with the outcome.
So, based on the facts, so out of nearly 13,000 requests, we've had 39
complaints altogether related to
complaints. If you're receiving complaints, please have those parties, and certainly this is an open meeting, so if anyone wishes to complain about the system, please reach out. Because for some of you, your perception of the system and the number of complaints is not reflected in the data. Some of you have a different experience. We can't fix things or address people's concerns unless we actually know about them. But I think it was a very good report because it actually shows that perception may be very different from reality, or we don't have people coming through the door if they've got a concern, and we do need them to do that.
Okay, councillors, thank you. So we've got a mover and seconder. Those in favour? Carried. That's 6-1. Councillor Vardy and Councillor Spannell. Okay, councillors, 15, business without notice. No. Councillors, would you like to go straight into confidential or would you like to take a 5-minute break? 5-minute break? Right, we'll do a quick, very quick 5-minute break and then we'll go into confidential. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll get on to our confidential meeting. I'll just read through the provisions that in accordance with section 254J4 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the meeting will close at this part of the meeting to the public for the reasons and matters noted. Item E, legal advice obtained by the local government or legal proceedings involving the local government, including, for example, legal proceedings that may be taken by or against the local government. And G, negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interest of the local government. Is that it, Jackie?
Yep.
That's it. Could I have a mover and seconder that we go into confidential on the basis of those? Councillor Barty's moving and Councillor Lang. Thank you. And those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Thank you. Okay, councillors, that brings us to item 16.1, encroachment of shed at Priors Creek development. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew and Councillor Barty. Those in favour? Carried. That's 6 and 0. Thank you.
There's crumbs on the side of the door.
Okay, item 16.2, acquisition of interest in lot 152 SP 120085. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney and Councillor Spanos. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Okay, item 16.3, renewal of lease over part of lot 2 on CPNR 7968 for Disaster Coordination Centre. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Vardy and Councillor Hayden. Those in favour? That's carried. That's 7. Item 16.4, TRC 2023-03, provision of traffic control services. Mover of the officer's recommendation, Councillor Lang and Councillor Barty. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Item 16.5, TRC 2024-10, extension provision of management services, Malanda Falls Caravan Park. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney and Councillor Barty. Those in favour? That's carried. That's 5. 5-2, that's Councillor Cardew and Councillor Spanos. Item 16.6, TRC 2025-09, Asphalt Overlay Program 2024-25. Mover of the officer's recommendation, Councillor Barty and Councillor Hayden. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. (16.7) SCADA preferred software supplier. We have a mover of the officer's recommendation, Councillor Lang and councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. And 16.8, Eureka Electric Vehicle Charging Station Proposal. Mover of the officer's recommendation, councillor Vardy and councillor Bilney. Those in favour? That's 6. Thank you. Councillor Cardew. Okay, councillors, that's it for today. Thank you very much.